we are here with Kalpana, who runs an organization for South Asians, and she was very instrumental in like getting this litigation together around H1B. So first of all, Kalpana, welcome to our show. We do this like immigration roundtable where we bring in leaders in immigration. First of all, on behalf of the immigrant community, I want to like thank you for all the work you are doing. Maybe like what we can do is like quickly start with like a quick introduction about you, your work in immigration, then we can directly get into what's going on around H1B and what you have been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, Atal, thank you so much for having me, and hello to
Yeah.
all your guests. I'm Kalpana Peddibhotla, and I'm the executive director of the South Asian American Justice Collaborative, or SACHCO. We're basically the first national legal nonprofit um, whose goal is to fight for the civil and human rights of the South Asian diaspora in the United States. We formed last year and started rolling out services this year, but this was a long term project that was cultivated by the South Asian American Bar Association, and their foundation was actually our fiscal sponsor up until a few weeks ago when and we're now like a separate full on nonprofit. But the idea of being able to build an organization to protect our civil rights and to advance our issues has been a long time coming. Um, my particular role, in addition to being a co-founder of Sajco, is I'm actually an immigration lawyer. I think my gray hairs probably show it. I've been practicing law for over 25 years, and I've spent most of my career in immigration. And my client base has largely been from South Asia. And I worked in all areas of immigration, from business immigration, like what we're fighting for here, but all the way over to asylum cases, deportation, and appeals. So and I was very excited that I could help bring the issues that affect our communities, that we could actually take some action on it.
So I guess like maybe I think everyone was shocked when they heard about this H1B proclamation. So like maybe we can get into like how did it come to you, because I guess like you were busy with other things for Satchco, bringing in together the diaspora, the South Asian diaspora for causes related to immigration. Like how did all this litigation came together?
Yeah, it was so interesting. The Friday that it happened, I can't believe it's just been 2 weeks because it's just been a whirlwind. I was seriously busy on other issues for our organization, but I'm on the chat, like WhatsApp, like all of us are on WhatsApp, and I'm on a WhatsApp with South Asian attorneys across the United States who are immigration lawyers. Who were the WhatsApp was just exploding with whatever was going on, and I literally didn't have a chance to read what all of it was about. Somebody had told me, "Oh, this is crazy," and I'm like, "What are they all talking about?" But we, as an organization, have since the beginning of this year, early spring rather, we started staffing a hotline for impacted international students that was set up by the UAW, which is a union, UAW 4811, which is essentially the union for academic workers in the University of California system. And I happened to get a call related to our work on that hotline. And the person on the call told me, "Oh, this executive order happened. Does it impact me?" So I went back. I was driving. I went home to go read it, and I was just shocked that that's the intention of the government, essentially to impose, or the administration to impose an unconstitutional tax on immigrant workers. So and then I think, as we all know, what happened. There was one state, there was an executive order, and then there was an entire rolling back of what that executive order meant, and as if we couldn't read it for what it actually said. But as soon as that happened on that Friday night, everything just evolved from there, and we quickly joined forces with some of the other national immigration firms that came together to fight back.
Got it. So I guess like I mean, I have seen a lot of efforts where immigration organizations come together, but this is like, one of a kind where within 2 weeks, this like, kind of lawsuit has come together. So give us a little bit like overview about like how did all this came together with like different organizations coming together, different law firms coming together to partner up.
Well, I think it's really, and I need to call it out, it's really the leadership by a group called Impact Litigation, which is a organization representing four different law firms. Um, there's Chuck Cook from Cook and Baxter down in Atlanta, Jesse Bless, and Greg Siskin. And then I forget exactly the name of the other fourth firm, but there's another firm on there that they formed this group called Impact Litigation about several years ago, where they decided that the only way to kind of make headway in U.S. immigration and to push back against some of these policies and admit how our laws were being implemented was to come together and do federal litigation. So they were the ones actually who took the lead on the students' cases, and I had been in touch with them during that time. But this time, we said, look, we'd like to be part of the group of co-counsel. We're already hearing about what's going on, and we believe there's a role for us to play. So we first connected with Impact Litigation, and they had brought in Justice Action Center and Democracy Forward, two leading organizations that have been doing federal litigation, and in particular have been doing litigation around some of the executive orders that this administration has issued. So they came together. So basically, the immigration lawyers, we all kind of connected with the federal litigators and decided to take the battle together.
Got it. I guess like I think maybe like starting with when this proclamation came about, I think in the initial couple of days there was like just so much uncertainty about
Yeah.
how this is gonna actually turn out to be from Friday to Sunday. And I guess like then there was this clarification on Sunday that it doesn't impact the current visa holders with certain degree, there was some clarification. I guess like how do you guys look at like litigation from a perspective of like urgency? Because I guess it was urgent immediately, but then when it didn't impact the current visa holders, the urgency kind of changed a little bit. So how does like where are we at right now in this litigation in terms of the urgency or how what is like the case like now?
Sure. So we, as lawyers, we treated this as urgent because um, I think initially our thinking was that these policy memorandums can't necessarily roll back an unlawful executive order. And so we approached it, I certainly approached it with that view, is that there was just so much uncertainty, and we were already hearing of situations where people were going to to consulates to get their visa stamped and then being told that they couldn't do it despite some of the agency guidance that subsequently came out. So my perspective is that it was urgent from the moment it started. So and we essentially did 2 weeks of work, 2 months of work in 2 weeks, and a lot of that work was trying to identify, I think that I stopped paying attention to the agency corrections and started really just focusing my personal energy as a member of the legal team on identifying people who we did feel were going to be impacted in either the near future or the not so distant future. And so that was our kind of our approach. We are trading the subsequent memos as part of kind of final agency action to kind of form the legal basis of the challenge. So even if they said that, well, it doesn't impact people who already got the H1B, we think that even if it's forward looking, that forward looking itself is an unlawful use of executive power, that it violates the Administrative Procedures Act, that it's outside the authority of the executive to impose a tax. Congress is the only one who can impose a tax. So we're taking the position that regardless of those memos, there was still not only a legal basis to do so, but there is impending harm right now. I mean, just think about it. Even if I don't know what your journey was like, but maybe the journey of your listeners, the decision to file that H-1B for the next cycle, let's say that are cap subject petitions, most of those decisions are made 6 months before, right? Sometimes even a year before, right? You have people who are there at a private company that's on a STEM OPT. Good chance that those employers are already thinking about filing for them. So if they're looking at that price tag, they're now suddenly have to rethink their hiring plans and hiring budgets. So in that sense, it is urgent. Um, if you think about people who are on cap exempt petitions, those filings were about to happen right now, as is the case for one of our plaintiffs. So now suddenly that person doesn't have an option available to them. So in that sense, we do think that continues to be an urgent case.
Got it. So I guess like, a lot of different people are looking at it like from different angles. One angle is like, charging 100,000 fees is just like, ridiculous. It's just like a ridiculous amount for any government to ask, because I guess like the fees for H1B is capped, as in like they can only charge kind of the fees, which is the cost for processing it, rather than,
That's right.
an amount. So like when you uh when you look at this litigation that has been filed, like what do you think is like the basis, like if you want to go into details of some of that, what's the basis defined on why this is like a little bit like, why this is not right to do, this fees is not right, what is the basis of that, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, so fees, all fees for U.S. immigration visa petitions has to be tied to the cost of processing those cases. So it's H-1Bs are no exception, and nor should a new rule apply to them, right? It can't be sort of like, I just want to pick a number arbitrarily, right? Because that's the basis of the lawsuit. This is an arbitrary, capricious act outside that violates the Administrative Procedures Act. You can't just arbitrarily say I'm going to assign a number to it because it's not connected to the program itself, nor does it really even address the alleged harms for why they wanted to bring those kinds of fees forward in the first place, right? So the alleged harms, and I'm saying alleged because I think that's what it is. They're alleged harms of fraud and misuse of the H-1B system. If you and just by imposing anyway $100,000 tax doesn't mean that you're addressing any of those claims either, right? So in fact, you're just doing quite the opposite. You're setting up a pay-to-play system as opposed to a system based on merit, right? So I think that that's a big concern that we have with the way the fees were assigned and determined in the first place, because there wasn't any. It's not tied to any actual math related to the H-1B. But I want to step back also and just address like what the executive order said, right? That there's this misuse of the H-1B system. It's constantly cited as an abused system. Well, guess what? There's only currently 8 willful violators that are even listed on the Department of Labor's site, right? So this idea that there's rampant fraud when you've got thousands of employers that use the program, it kind of begs the question, if that's the case, then why aren't you finding more fraud and identifying more willful violators? We have an entire system that's set up to address fraud in our system, the FDNS system, the fraud detection system, and they can make more site visits if that was what the concern was. I don't know. I think it just baffles me. The H-1B program is probably the most highly regulated of all the business employment based visas that we have, right? It requires you to have pay a prevailing wage that is set by the Department of Labor, that employers have to attest under the penalty of perjury, right, that they are not violating. So the ramp that idea that this is a run amok system, there may be issues, but abuses is a high standard, and I don't think it's been met here, nor does it justify $100,000 tax.
Yes, like I mean, let's say now that this lawsuit has been filed, I guess like what do you see as the path that's going to be now? Because I guess like a lot of immigrants are anxious about this whole thing and trying to figure out what they should be doing. A lot of corporates are also uncertain about the change. So, what do you think is like the current, what is the current knowledge right now about like, okay, is this litigation is filed? Like, when do we expect to hear back around it? What the timeline we should be expecting, or like, would the fees still go into effect as of now in the lottery 2026 or not? Where are we on these things?
Yeah, I mean, we'd obviously want this to move fast. We'd love to have the executive order vacated. I can't predict the timeline. So we did the first step, which is we filed a complaint. The government has the right to bring a response. As I mentioned to you, unfortunately, we can't really reveal litigation strategy because there's so many considerations that we're weighing and have been weighing about how to do this. But we wanted to make sure we had a strong plaintiff base in the first place. We feel that we're actually, I think, in many ways in an ideal place. We filed in the Northern District of California. Probably the highest number of H1B petitions that were filed for people working in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm really glad to see that it's in a place where it's home to so many H1B beneficiaries. But yeah, I certainly hope to have positive news to share in the coming weeks, but I'm afraid I can't give a timeline for it. And I know that's an unsatisfactory answer for many people because people need to plan their lives. We're not just talking about new caps, people who are on OPT. There are people who are in need to change status for a number of reasons, and from other categories. And I hope that we can move to resolve this fairly quickly. I hope that I kind of feel like I don't know if, and I don't mean this maliciously. I'm not sure that when they made the executive order, that they fully thought out all the repercussions, right? Because I think that is why they so quickly rolled back and walked back, when it would be implemented and the kind of chaos that they probably unintentionally created. But I also don't think they remembered certain key things. Like we have those folks who come to the US on a J1 as medical residents who agree as part of that program to then go serve in a medically underserved area on an H1B, right? Did the administration think that through and say, okay, no longer are we going to have that pipeline of folks to meet these health shortage areas, medically underserved areas, um, through the use of foreign doctors? I don't know if that was fully thought through. So I do hope that part of what we did in our complaint was to tell that story that seems to have possibly escaped some of the people who determined that this was the executive order they wanted to bring.
Got it. I guess like one more question I have around this is like I guess like one litigation effort has been now, put in place, and I mean we don't know the timeline yet, but looks like we will know about it more within the next few weeks. Now, I mean, at this point, it's like still like executive order is in place. So, as of now, it's applicable to 2026 lottery, but hopefully that litigation gives some relief. But like, what are the different situations do you think happening from now on until, let's say start of 2026? Are you seeing like other people working on litigation efforts, or like how can the community come together in bigger numbers here?
Yeah, I absolutely think and hope there should be additional litigation, right? So we represented a few types of plaintiff groups, right? So we represented the labor unions, like the local UAW 4811, because of their strong advocacy for the international students in the University of California system. We represented the union that represents residents, and we also represented the union that represents professors. In addition, there's a religious organization, there's a nursing staffing company. So we represented those sectors. I would really love to see other types of plaintiff groups come forward, in particular IT industry. I think should come forward and be part of a litigation, because I don't think that we should take this sort of this cloak that's been placed on this whole entire sector that has created so many jobs and has been responsible for so much innovation in the United States. I don't think that that sector should just accept this notion that it is somehow harming America. I think it's quite the opposite. All the economists show that there have been the driving factors of growth. And it's not always just like, oh, this biggest and the best and the brightest, they drive growth in America. Even just, the average computer programmer or software engineer who may not be at the head of an organization is still contributing significantly to our economy and creating job multiplier effects. And we as a country lose when those software engineers end up going to other places in the world that are more hospitable to them. So I would love to see that group of folks come together and be part of litigation to push back on the narrative that has emerged.
Got it. So I guess like I think your advice for immigrants here is like just like more of like wait until we hear more about this litigation, kind of like how the impact comes out to be is what your
No,
advice
no,
is.
no, don't wait, right? Come join, right? So
Okay. Mhm,
mobilize, organize.
mhm.
There are opportunities to participate. If you just give up these fights to the lawyers, then there's then you're sort of taking things lying down, right? If you're impacted, organize, form a coalition, file an amicus brief in our case, right? Reach out to the folks that are leading this litigation, myself and the others that are on the pleadings, because I think there is a role, right? And there's opportunities if people want to come forward now that they've gotten a little bit of courage from those who did decide to bravely step forward, that they can join and be part of the litigation, because I do think it is a person effort, right? It's not just the lawyers to fight it out in the courts. It's for lawyers need plaintiffs. We can't file a lawsuit just like I can't just go file a lawsuit because I disagree with something. I need to be able to file a lawsuit to protect the rights of an individual or a company or an organization. And so we need individuals, companies, and organizations who want to step forward and be part of a lawsuit. And so I wouldn't say it's just wait it out. If this is of interest, there's been calls for plaintiff requests that we've made. And then there's also things you can do. Change the court of public opinion. Talk about the great things you're doing if you're an H1B worker. Um, Organize other H1B workers to join you in those efforts, because I think that people keep so scared that they give up their rights before the fight has even begun. So and I know it's scary. I know it's scary to be an immigrant in the United States when your status is dependent on our government's actions. But I do think you have protections, and we shouldn't just give up those protections.
Got it. I guess like maybe this is a very interesting topic that you touched on, that immigrants do have the protection and they should not be in fear. But I guess which is exactly opposite of what I think a lot of H1B people feel or like are now feeling even more. in the current climate? Like, do they even have any rights, and how they can basically, stand up for themselves? So I guess like when you talk about rights and like the things that they can do on H1B versus they cannot do, is there anything specific which you will share? Like, okay, like these are the things you are like 100% you can do these on H1Bs, or like as immigrants you can do in the US versus not do in the US, or like what is like the guidance around that has been?
Well, I mean, um, it's the same guidance that's always existed, right? So if you violate the laws of our country, that could have an impact on your immigration status. That's always been the true. That's been true under this administration, the prior one before that. I've practiced under four different information administrations, so it's not like those rules are always the same. I think that right now you're seeing a couple things that's happening in the country where there's been a silencing of people's free speech. I think those are unlawful silencings. But if you feel like you're worried, right, that's stuff that you need to individually evaluate for yourself as to how much of a visible presence you might have regarding your social media and other kinds of things. But I think there's productive ways to continue to raise your voice. Um, as I said, H1B workers are reliant on their employers, but their employers are also reliant on them, right? So I hope that people can figure out a way to get their employers to go get behind them, to support them, and maybe even do more from them for them in this litigation.
Got it. I guess like one other question that I have is like about about the other executive order which was around birthright citizenship. I mean, then I think this is like around H1B, which is also here. So I guess like in the employment based category, I guess like even the people who come through H1B and all, they are impacted by both in some ways. Uh, do you feel like both of these have any relationship as such, or like what do you know about like okay, what's happening with the birthright citizenship one?
Well,
Like, do
yeah,
you
I mean,
think? Yeah.
there's a few things to unpack there. So I think, like,
Yes.
number one, with the birthright citizenship, um, like that's just a affront to the U.S. Constitution. The idea that you can take away people's U.S. citizenship through an executive order, right? We as an organization, we signed on to the amicus brief that the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund filed in a lawsuit that was brought by the Asian Law Caucus and the ACLU and other organizations. That's the one that actually was successful in forming a class and then getting an injunction on that order. But you that um, itself was there's no legal basis, right? No matter what anybody tells you, it's like there's 100+ years of case law that recognizes birthright citizenship. It's enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. But what it raised in people's minds is whether they belong in this country, right? And who gets to decide who belongs and on what basis. And I think that is something that no one group gets to dictate who belongs to this country, right? So that's critical. And to the extent that that birthright citizenship order reflected an agenda that's based on prioritizing one group of people over others, I think it's worth pushing back on. Like I was born in the United States. I was born in the United States at a time when my father was an international student. According to that executive order, I would not be a U.S. citizen. And so then what would that make me, right? You can hear the accent in my voice, right? I speak like the accent of this country with a little bit of a southern twang since I grew up in Texas. What other identity do I have other than my U.S. identity, right? This is my country. Um, for those people, but what that birthright citizenship has in common, I think, with the H1B is we can gloss over the H1B and say, oh, the only reason why the executive order came about was what they were worried about fraud and the abuse in the H1B system, which I doubt, because the evidence is actually just not there to support them for what they do. But the reality is, over 70% of H1B holders are Indians, Indian nationals. So we cannot completely divest what happened on this executive order from this broader issue of belonging, right? Who belongs, who gets to decide who belongs. And I think that that is at some level what is happening and what was one of the reasons behind bringing the H1B executive order.
Got it. I guess like I think these are all the questions that I had for you, Kalpana. I guess like first of all, yeah, just like thank you for everything you are doing. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience about this whole H1B litigation?
Yeah, I just stay tuned. We will post updates on our website. We're just getting that page built actually, but if you want to find us, our website is saajco.org. It's saajco.org. Send us a message through contact if you're curious about the litigation and whether you want to learn more about it or participate in it. We can't respond to everybody's emails just asking us questions about the litigation. We'll post updates, but if you want to become part of it, please do reach out because that's how change happens. Is that people raise their hand and say, "I'm ready to fight." So I hope people will think. I believe this is a country worth fighting for. I believe the immigration program. I believe our country benefits from the skilled work labor of H1B professionals, and I would hate to see folks give up on that fight. Just like you, Atali, you've been here in this fight for a while, and so I hope people will look at you as a role model of what can be, and that they will figure out a way to fight for themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, and to our audience, thank you for being listening this. And if you have any other questions to us, do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you so much.